Раз.
1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, dear friends.
Говорили, да, нас уже представляли, я поэтому, наверное,
We've been all presented, so I'll not name all the names again. This discussion today is going to be about how web attacks can bury your business. It's not all that bad. I'll tell you how it is. Speaking about web defenses, this means servers, web applications, websites. According to our researchers, more than 60% of Russian web resources use such CMS systems as 1C Bittrex and WordPress, the most popular content management systems. These are the focal points of attacks for hackers when they try to infiltrate the infrastructure of small and medium companies. The next step for them is to deploy that infrastructure for such things as phishing, hosting malware, or doing ransomware attacks. The first question then is this: why are attackers focused on these particular CMSs, while other access points can be used by attackers to access your infrastructure? Denis. Hi, everybody. Well, your question actually contains some of the answer. These systems are the most popular, which means that a lot of companies use these CMS systems, and once a new exploit or vulnerability becomes public, it can be used or directed at many companies at once for any legitimate activity that you have in mind. Then users don't always keep up with updates because there are patches, not just new functionality. And if a CIO or an IT specialist fail to update a subversion, these vulnerabilities remain open. Onto other access points. Many companies rely on web services, exposed services, to support their business processes. This can be online file storages, in-house messengers, staging platforms for tests. These points get exposed and can become vulnerable, where attackers gain access. So you need to do more than just focusing on your main page in CMS. You need to protect the entire perimeter. I wanted to add to this. Thank you. Social engineering is another challenge as well. It's the simplest thing, and it's the most frustrating thing. We give up a lot of data on our own. Phishing, passwords, again, using a single password for different things, just for your convenience. You turn off antivirus if it's bugging you. You post a lot of things about yourself online. You respond to weird emails. So it's easy to fall for an attack. There is a lack of digital hygiene or literacy. It is indeed a pain. You need to be mindful in terms of your cyber behaviors. A lot of this is publicized in the media when attackers infiltrate the infrastructure and do their things. Site defacing, for example, the websites that used Bittrex. It was around 1,000 websites or more that got hacked, and suspicious links were posted there. If you clicked the link, you'd lose your data. There were a lot of attacks on such resources as online stores, recipe websites for cooking, online bookstores, online libraries. Just look at this case with one food delivery service, where the entire ecosystem was paralyzed, starting from the call center to other apps to the website. And this all is actually just the tip of the iceberg. We hear about these incidents because the company names are famous. This doesn't mean that small businesses and medium businesses do not get attacked. And such consequences can be catastrophic for smaller companies. You might lose your clients with a database if fakes are published on your website, or if illegal information is published on your website. Your website will get blocked by the authorities, and you'll forego potential revenues. The next question is why small and medium businesses are not eager to invest into defenses amid this threat landscape. Dmitry, well, not all clients recognize that there are such threats. First, there are high-risk clients who know what this is and what the consequences are. These are the media companies, radio companies, and entertainment companies. And then there are companies who have well-developed risk management. They procure such protections and safeguards as insurance even, on top of the information security in-house. As for SMEs, a lot of smaller companies think that a hacker just wouldn't notice them. There are 2 points here. Small and medium businesses are not aware of IT. Oftentimes, they're focused on their narrow niche, and they don't have a budget for IT even. And then they also think that if it hasn't happened yet, it will never happen in the future, even if it's going to be very painful if that actually happens, with severe consequences. Yeah, Anton? Another thing from me. There is a cognitive bias here at play. There are more small and medium-sized enterprises and businesses, and each owner has their business partner or a friend who hasn't been affected by hacker attacks. These incidents happen to some other people in some other world. This skewed optic prevents you from being proactive. Only if it happens. Once you've lost the data, you've lost money, you get investigated by a regulator. Only then you come to realize it, whereas you need to realize it now. Dmitry? Thank you. I think the companies in this category do not pay attention to security until their first incident. And they're lucky if it's not their last. Denis? Well, in case of small and medium companies, we often try to use our lingo and jargon in our communications, whereas they just don't understand what we're talking about. So it's on us to adjust our communication as messaging. We need to engage with SMEs in the language of business, show how incidents lead to business losses with specific cases. Then SMEs can get an idea, a quantified idea of their financial risks related to IT security. That would enable their decision-making, and we need to contribute to this by changing our tone of voice in our communications. Yeah, I think Dmitry, as a customer, can tell us about these approaches and how an unavailable web resource for a day can deal a lot of damage. Yeah, web resources and applications are a major component in our business, and we try to prevent even short downtimes. Unavailability for 24 hours would be critical and non-tolerable for us. Customer loyalty will suffer because we cease to provide our services. We are a public company established by the Ministry of Finance. We are regulated by a federal law on lotteries, which means that we have lottery draws basically every 15 minutes on our website. If it's down, then someone who got a lottery ticket will not be able to learn about the outcomes, what the draw itself would not happen. And this can lead to compliance violations in our dealings with the regulators and the state. And then you have financial losses as well that can come from this. A day of downtime for our business can amount to 3 to 7% of our monthly revenues. We understand that if this were to happen, this can go beyond just that one day, and the losses would compound. So we really care about security and uptime of our applications. Okay, thank you. Moving on. There is this other issue or opinion by SMEs that their owners, founders, directors often believe that they're not visible to attackers, they're off the radar. Maybe they believe that they are not attractive as a victim. But in actuality, the businesses themselves do things to become more visible. Banner ads, context ads, PR campaigns, all other things online. This is to acquire customers. This is to drive your success. The second point here is that a hacker's mindset is different from how business owners imagine it. Hackers don't care for your industry or your size or what you do. Not always. Yeah, of course. It's not always the case, but a hacker could select 5,000 websites in .ru and filter them from large to small, or make a mix of larger and smaller companies. And smaller companies tend to be less protected. They'll run a vulnerability scan for a couple of hours. Once that's done, they would launch an attack. Hackers have their own agenda, and I think we can discuss it now, because there are different motivations behind attacking larger and smaller companies and how it's done. Andrei, what can be an attacker's objectives for smaller businesses? Well, first, there can be financial gains as the name for the attack. Everybody's human, everybody wants to eat. Sometimes competitors hire hackers to attack another company. So this is the basic deal. Then hackers can seek gains from the victim. If you got encrypted or if your database is used to blackmail you, that's either to resume your operations or prevent a leak. The third part here is once the database has leaked, it can be sold on the dark web for further malicious activities. That was the financial part. Then you can become a node in a botnet for attacks directed at larger companies. And you're an accomplice in this case, as well as a victim. And your web resource can be used to mount attacks on major websites. So you can get a knock on the door. Yeah, premeditated crime by a group of people. Exactly that. Then there are personal grudges, revenge, disgruntled customers. Then you have political motivations. It has been on the rise recently as well. Another important thing is that hackers are getting younger and younger. So the younger guys and gals need some targets to train on. They don't care about who you are. It's just a testing scenario for them to boost their skills. Hackers have their own communities as well. There are scores and rankings there too. And if you hack a well-known or a larger resource, you can boost your score. I think that's the lay of the land. I wanted to add to this. There are what I call samurai hackers because they do not pursue any goal. It's just all about the journey, and then they delight in seeing how people suffer. Hard to explain, but there are lots of such people, and they can become a problem for you. Then there is this downside of AI who help script kiddies exploit more vulnerabilities. The surface of attack expands, and smaller and medium companies are a testing ground for them, for training. Right. Dmitry, do you have any real-life examples, maybe? Something from your clients?
Ну, здесь я, наверное, могу привести примеры по поводу хактивистов.
I can give you examples of hacktivism.
Момент, то, что хакеры хотят, они в первую очередь, хотят вывести ресурсы из строя и
hackers want to disable some resources deliberately to make a company uncomfortable. There was an attack, it was filtered, the resource didn't go down, but then they claimed that it was to their credit that they made the target company to spend a lot of money on expensive defenses. So, yeah, that seems a bit like a bit of a stretch, but okay. Now, to sum up, hackers are driven by money, that's always there. You got some stutter there, aren't you, Hack? No? So financial gain, training and testing their skills, samurai hackers, for whom it's all about the journey, unfair competition, and then like community things where you want to be the best of the best. Now, let's discuss what companies will get less attention by such hackers or attackers. There are two companies which are similar. Which one will become a victim eventually? And how do you ensure that it's more difficult and expensive to attack a company? Dmitry?
Здесь хочу сказать, что все то, что находится в интернете, все может быть подвержено.
I wanted to say that everything on the internet can be attacked, and hackers can attack everything. It can be a small company, it can be a major company, and the attack itself can be both successful and unsuccessful. So here's the question. What's more expensive, to have a protection from an attack or an attack itself? If we take a look at the open source data, then an attack price are quite different. They, well, depending on the complexity and longevity, they start with $50. But it also can be said that if a resource is protected, and for an experienced hacker is very easy to see, they can just check IP address or the route who owns those IP addresses. It can be said that the prices increase in multiples. That's the point number one. Point number two, if a resource is not protected at all, then anyone can hack it, not just a real hacker. Just a simple IT person can download a specific tool on the internet. Obviously, that's not a plug, but I'm saying it's very easy. They are available online, you can download them, you can use them, but obviously we are not promoting them. We are not sending the QR codes, we are not telling you where to go, where to find them, but they are. Yes, and I have an example from our practice. We face DDoS attacks periodically, and this year, during the new year, one of the most important time for our organization, and just a few hours before the next program, when we have this our lottery, we had a DDoS attack, we had a protection, we were able to prevent it, but at the same time, the malicious user realized that they just stopped in 15 minutes. And we saw the same happen multiple times during the last year. When it started, went for a few minutes and stopped because they did not reach the result. So once again, let's talk about the economy of an attack. Hackers always assess how much resources, personal, monetary, they spend to get to their goal. And the main point here is to make yourself unattractive, so that they would spend much more resources compared to what they gain. And finally, if they get there, they should realize and understand that they cannot do anything here. So the economy of an attack must be increased as much as possible. I want to add a few words. If we change hackers to malicious users are a little bit different. They can be external, internal, but they're not exactly hackers. In our company, there are people who violate our information security stage, not because they wanted to do so, but because they just happen to do so. That's also a few words on the accessibility of different nodes and different structures. Yes, it's a different perspective. It's not really a hacker, but it's a person who compromised your security. Yes, it's a bystander. It's just negligent behavior.
Какие классы решений, в принципе, могут помочь?
Now let us discuss potential solutions. What can be used to help companies which are attacked?
Dmitry
Belyanin.
Какие классы решений здесь?
Well, what kind of solutions do we have? Well, first of all,
можем поговорить, наверное, про эшелонированный подход, то, что для...
There could be an approach with multiple lines.
Свой класс решений защиты.
And different attacks have different solutions, different security for them. What we filter at DDoS, we cannot filter on the packages. The same applies to WAV and so on. Different bricks, each brick should be in its own place. Well, I would like to add a few words. The more tools and the better collaboration between those tools is, the better it will be for the security. Starting with anti-DDoS, anti-bot, web application firewall. Well, there is a different part. It's a DevSecOps when you have an application which initially already had the security intact. Maybe it does not have any vulnerabilities at all, or maybe just minimum one. Obviously, when we are talking about stack technologies, when we are talking about WAF, anti-DDoS, those technologies allow to have the most efficient counteraction to external threats. Okay, thank you. So now we can say that the same DDoS attacks evolve, they change. Maybe we can say a few words on this. Yeah, that's true. We can say a few words here. So first of all, and the most obvious one is that everybody is talking about this, that the power and volume of DDoS attacks increases year on year. There are also new approaches and old approaches change. So for example, during the first quarter of this year, we saw quite a lot of, let's say, carpet bombings, when a lot of different targets are checked and the most vulnerable are selected. Next point, there is a trend to change angles of attacks. Previously, they were amplification attacks, spoofing attacks, and now there is a trend to use botnets and botnets with high volume. Point number 3, it can be said that there is a higher chance of smart devices. And smart devices are basically personal computers, like a vacuum cleaner, maybe a lamplight. They have many different capabilities to generate legitimate traffic. They can work with packages, they can attack channels, and we have very good bandwidth and not many devices on the end point, and they can generate a lot of traffic. And point number 4, where with L7 attacks, there are more proxy attacks. Hackers attack and infect resources, and then they deploy gray proxies and they use them to have an attack. And DDoS attack can be a distraction for a more deep attack at a different level. Is this true? Yes, that is true. I think it's a part of multi-vector attack. When you distract the defensive team, all the information security team, IT security team are trying to prevent DDoS attack, and the hackers are already inside the infrastructure and they try to exploit the vulnerabilities. Okay, thank you. And now we can move to the next question. Where small and medium enterprises easier, safer, cheaper to host their web resources, their own server racks, or maybe on the maybe on the cloud. What services should be used? Question to Anton. Well, objectively speaking, it should be in the cloud. But my personal opinion is that information security is a really complicated matter currently. And this should be done by professionals. It is true. Small businesses, medium businesses, there are many companies that are really far away from IT. Obviously, not everyone is in IT. And building the whole system when protecting information, it's not just buying a CM or something else. First, you have to define what kind of threats are you protecting from. You need to have your biggest strategy. Then you need to find solutions for those tasks. Then finally you have to implement the structure and you have to use it, you have to maintain it, and for that you need experts. And not everybody can ready to spend a lot of money to buy those experts, and probably it doesn't really matter. You just buy security as a service, you buy a cloud solution, and you use it as much and as long as you need it, and you pay just as you use it. It's a good solution. You have professional services, and if you don't need information security, you just stop paying this company and you don't think how you should. sell those hardware or maybe even people. Well, actually, it's a broadcast. We should not be speaking about selling people. But obviously, jokes aside, if I were an owner of a small or medium enterprise, I would probably use cloud solution. I think we have examples from our practice too. We have a very specific service with a very high load. I already mentioned that, for example, during the New Year, we could have a lot of legitimate users during the New Year, and we need to analyze, to process this traffic and let it through. So, for example, if on average our load can be up to 1,000 requests per second, then during New Year we could have times 100 of these requests. And just to handle this, we either have to use scalability or we have to use some tools which already allow this kind of scale. And I'm talking about in-house solutions. And we get help from a solution, from a cloud solution, because it can be scaled without our participation. We are just sure that it will handle any load. And in terms of economy, we analyzed, we calculated that if we compare year-on-year costs of WAF solution, then it's cheaper 30 times compared to an in-house solution. But that's only because we have very irregular solution. We have irregular load, and several times per year we have this very high load, and that's why we need hardware, that's why we need solutions, and we can do this with the cloud solution. Or maybe they can have an additional invoice for an additional day, but it's much better than compared to an in-house solution. Okay, so comfort is checked, but when we're talking about the protection, the security of web services, applications, any words on this?
Касательно защищенности,
Well, speaking about the security and protection itself, well, the question is, what and who do you choose? Obviously, there are experts, and if there are experts, they will provide security, the kind of security you need. But also, you should not forget that you delegate a part of your responsibility. Well, in some cases, there could be incidents, and you have to analyze them. Well, long story short, I am for cloud solutions. I must say that companies move, and there is a certain trend, and the companies now can use those solutions in cloud services, and it helps our technological partners, our experts who work in information security and in IT. It helps them with scalability and increased load. So I'm also for cloud solutions. Okay, thank you. Now let us discuss what should small and medium enterprises do if they don't have enough budget to provide information security. Maybe they don't have any budget at all. And they cannot afford expensive hardware, they cannot afford expensive software. What should they do? Question to Dmitry.
Well,
first of all, they have to understand, and we have to understand what is protected and why is this protected. You have to analyze your digital assets and to see what could be the consequences if the whole system stops. Second point is to realize that you actually have to protect yourself. That's a very good point. It's not that expensive, and you can approach a vendor, you can ask them to assess and maybe appraise specific your case, and they will tell you how much it would cost for you. And probably you should think about information security already now. Anton, I think it's very important when companies try to build information security and they have different options, IPS, CM, and different solutions. I think this is the wrong approach. You should start with your internal audit. If you don't have enough expertise, you can get a third-party company that would help you analyze your situation, your system. You don't need an overly super great system. You need a system that would cover specifically your threats and vulnerabilities. So once you have these vulnerabilities and threats, then you have the problems to solve, you have the tasks. And once we have these tasks, then we can reach for vendors to solve these problems. So I think this is the correct solution. Dmitry, I do agree with my colleagues here, and I would like to add that it's very important to assess the risks correctly and to work those risks if the consequences of an incident could incur costs, and these costs would be 10 times, 100 times more, obviously you should spend on cybersecurity. Dennis, I would like to add that more and more popularity gain information security services, which was mentioned before. Information security as a service, you just delegate this to professionals, you don't need your expertise, you don't need your hardware, and it depends on your needs. It depends on your traffic, it depends on your business. I think for small and medium enterprises, it's a very good solution. Try to use it as a service to see that it's inexpensive, it's effective, and it's great. Thank you. And to sum up the whole discussion, the main ideas is that if you, as a company, and you represent small and medium enterprises, and you have a selling website, maybe you have a web application, all that should be protected. The whole functionality depends on the security, maybe 90%, maybe 100% depends on it. It's not expensive to start. You should take a look in the market. You just basically you need to want this. Cloud solutions are safe, long-term solutions, especially when we're talking about long-term. They are more beneficial. You would save more money. And a repeated idea today, if you haven't assessed your risks and what potential consequences and ramifications you could have, you should do this. To have some kind of internal audit, maybe analyze deface and other stories. It is very important because when you start calculating this, and people say that information security is expensive, it's very expensive, and we will not go there because it's very expensive. But once you start calculating all potential problems and you can see the threats you cover and vulnerabilities, it turns out that it's not that expensive. And you have better sleep. Well, we're talking about money, but there are other factors. There's reputation, there are reputation risks as well. And if you damage your reputation, or if you silence reputation of your clients and customers, they will just basically they will not trust you anymore, and obviously you would lose money as a result. Dear friends, thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, you can find us here in the venue. Yes, and we are open to answer your questions. Thank you and have a nice day.